welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into something absolutely beautiful, a truly profound and transformative journey. We're going to explore the nuanced, deeply comforting way that Islamic theology understands the true nature of the Creator. Often when people look at religion from the outside, they really only see the mechanics, right? The rules, the rituals, the do's and don'ts. But beneath all of that shebang is a rich, completely rational framework about who God actually is. Okay, let's dive into this. There's this famous statement from classical Islamic scholars that I just love. It says, "Knowing God is the paradise of this world." What they're getting at here is that Islamic theology isn't just about memorizing some rigid doctrine so you can win an academic debate. Not at all. It's a very real, open invitation to find profound inner peace by deeply knowing the Creator. It's the idea that true joy doesn't just come from the stuff you have, but from understanding the infinite majesty of the one who made you. So the central invitation of Islam is really to know the Creator through his names and attributes. This takes the concept of God, which, let's be honest, can sometimes feel like a distant, super abstract belief, and transforms it into a profound source of love, hope, and inner peace. Learning about God isn't just about gathering dry information. It's meant to be a deeply comforting, actionable faith that fundamentally changes how you experience your everyday life. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the central invitation, move on to the logical argument, then we'll address the elephant in the room, and wrap up with a takeaway for a seeker. Let's move to part 1, the central invitation, beyond the abstract. See, when someone studies the attributes of God in Islam, the goal is never just to sound smart. It's actually meant to organically increase your love, your reverence, and your reliance on the Creator in real-life situations. Think about it like this. You can't truly love someone you don't actually know, right? By learning who the Creator is, his mercy, his power, his wisdom, worship transforms. It goes from being this heavy, tedious chore into something incredibly sweet and deeply personal. It basically builds a relationship based on absolute trust. Now, you might have actually heard the number 99 associated with Islam. There's a famous tradition stating that God has 99 names, and whoever comprehends and lives by them will enter paradise. But here's a really beautiful nuance. Classical scholars point out that God's majesty is literally infinite, so he isn't limited to exactly 99 names. Actually, scratch that. It's more like this number represents an open invitation to continually seek out and discover his endless majesty throughout the Quran and prophetic teachings. It's this vast ocean of knowledge, and you're just being invited to dive right in. Moving right along to part 2, the logical argument, a rational framework. The absolute core of Islamic theology is captured in one single Arabic word, Tawhid. Let's define that simply: unifying God in our worship. Tawhid means recognizing that the Creator is absolutely one and entirely unique. He has no partners in his actions, no equals in our worship, and absolutely no equivalent when it comes to his attributes. He's quite literally in a category of his own. And this brilliantly illustrates the calm, balanced framework classical scholars use to understand God. They laid out 4 simple rules for us. First, affirm what God has revealed about himself. Second, do not change or manipulate the obvious meanings of those words. Third, do not flat out deny the attributes just because you can't fully comprehend them. And fourth, and this is absolutely crucial, do not ever compare God to his creation. But this naturally raises a pretty fascinating question. If we are just humans with limited brains and we aren't supposed to compare God to creation, how on earth do we actually understand the descriptions of him in religious texts? Which brings us to part 3, addressing the elephant in the room, the human versus the divine. To answer that, we really have to address the elephant in the room, because this is where a ton of misunderstandings happen. It's a huge mental hurdle. Sometimes you'll read translated Islamic texts that say God has hands, or that he descends to the lowest heaven. A reader might naturally ask, wait, does Islam view God as human-like? And the answer to that is an absolute categorical no. Now, what's really interesting about this is the contrast. When the text uses a word like hands, it's actually a conceptual expression of his supreme capability and majesty. It is completely free from human weakness, anatomy, or biological form. See, human attributes are physical, they're limited, and they're prone to emotional volatility. Divine attributes in Islam denote absolute perfection without any comparison. So, if the text says God gets angry at injustice, it's not some volatile human temper tantrum, it's a profound expression of his supreme justice against oppression. It's all about majesty, not biology. The source material actually offers a truly brilliant analogy here to help us wrap our heads around this. Think about your own soul. You understand what a soul is, right? You know it exists, you feel its presence, and you understand its meaning. But can you imagine its physical form? Can you draw a picture of your soul? Or explain exactly the mechanics of how it interfaces with your body? No way. So the logic is, if we cannot even imagine the how of a created thing, like our own human soul, it is perfectly logical that we cannot imagine the how of the infinite creator. This leads to a historic golden rule in Islamic theology formulated over 1,000 years ago. The meaning is known, but the how is unknown. We know the meaning of God's mercy, his power, his seeing, and his hearing, but we don't ask how he sees or how he hears because our minds simply aren't equipped to process infinite reality. And believers find tremendous intellectual peace in this. You get to understand God's greatness without needing to confine him to a physical image or cram him into a tiny box constructed by human imagination.
Finally, let's look at part 4. Takeaway for a seeker, the real-world impact.
So, the crucial point is this. We've talked a lot about high-level theology today, but how does this beautifully change everyday human behavior and mental health? Well, it acts as a deeply comforting anchor for every single human emotion and struggle. When you're stressed about your bills and you deeply internalize that God is the provider, it drastically reduces daily anxiety. When you make a terrible mistake and you're feeling completely worthless, knowing he is the forgiver completely removes despair. And when you face huge, seemingly insurmountable obstacles, relying on the strong grants you profound courage. The theology literally gives you the exact psychological and spiritual tool you need for the exact moment you're in.
Ultimately, learning the divine names is an invitation to heal. It reveals this incredible dynamic between absolute awe and deep, deep intimacy. The Creator's majesty is entirely beyond our imagination, yet his mercy and care are closer to us than our own heartbeat, which leaves us with a pretty profound question to think about. What if the greatest, most comforting discovery you could ever make isn't about yourself, but about truly knowing the one who made you?